The film begins with the aftermath of a war, with Joshin devastated and sinking into deeper despair as the prospects for survival dwindle. However, this situation presents an opportunity for some rulers to seize power by hiring the best assassins in all of Joshin to eliminate anyone they desire. Meanwhile, the scene then shows Li Nun, who is known as the best hitman in Joshin at the moment. However, very little is known about him, so no one knows who Li Nun really is or whom he works for. What is certain is that his targets always end up dead, indicating that Li Nun has never failed in his mission. One day, Li Nun received an assignment to kill an official, but the official had already learned about this and prepared his best men to confront Li Nun. However, Li Nun easily defeated them, which made the official realize that he could not escape, so he tried to negotiate with Li Nun with a large bribe. Unfortunately, Li Nun refused, which made the official angry and threatened that his family would never let Li Nun live in peace and that they would hunt him down even to hell. In the end, Li Nun ignored this and promptly killed the official. Unexpectedly, Li Nun suddenly experienced chest pain, and he decided to see a physician. At that moment, it was revealed that Li Nun had a blood vessel blockage affecting his heart. To prevent it from worsening, the physician advised Li Nun to avoid using his fighting techniques and to refrain from engaging in intimate relations with the opposite sex. If Li Nun insisted on doing either, he could die. Hearing this, Li Nun asked about a remedy for his condition, and the physician mentioned that he had read about a plant called mawangcho, which might be able to cure his illness. However, the physician was not certain about this. Afterwards, as a precaution against the recurrence of his condition, the physician gave him painkillers but warned him not to consume too much, as it could cause his heart to explode. After leaving the physician's place, Li Nun went to a brothel and engaged in intimate relations there, ignoring the physician's advice. On the other hand, the physician was visited and threatened by assassins targeting Li Nun, forcing him to reveal details about his illness. After that, the assassins went straight to where Li Nun was, surprising him with their arrival, so Li Nun immediately got up to leave. However, it turned out that a prostitute named Yuul was also an assassin targeting him. At that moment, Li Nun managed to injure one of her eyes and eliminate the other assassins. However, because of the fight and his previous intimacy with the prostitute, his illness flared up again. A year later, Li Nun is now in the northern region of Joshin, near Mount Jangnam. While resting, he is teased by children there who take his belongings. Shortly after that, Li Nun, now without any possessions, sees a woman about to be attacked by 3 thugs. When he tries to help her, Li Nun is easily defeated. It could be because Li Nun has not yet recovered from his illness, or perhaps he is deliberately holding back his abilities to protect his identity as the best assassin. Afterwards, the woman named Shan Hong invites Li Nun to her house and quickly provides him with food. Soon after, Shan Hong's son, Chilbok, arrives and scolds his mother for bringing a stranger into their home. Not only that, he also warns her mother to be cautious, as Li Nun could be an opium addict. After finishing his meal, Li Nun thanked her and said that he would repay her later. However, Shan Hong held him back from leaving because she wanted to make Li Nun her servant. It turned out that her house was not just her residence, but also her private restaurant. After that, Li Nun began doing everything Shan Hong ordered, from wiping tables and delivering food to chopping firewood. That night, with nowhere else to stay, Li Nun was forced to sleep in Chilbok's room. At that time, Chilbok was engrossed in reading his favorite novel, a story about a hitman. Innocently, he said that the hitman could fight many bad people and make women fall for him. And for this reason, Chilbok aspired to become a hitman and make money by eliminating bad people. However, Li Nun responded by asking what if those people were not actually bad. It turned out that this was a question Li Nun had asked himself in the early days of his career as a hitman. The next day, Li Nun went to look for his lost belongings and eventually arrived at the place of a blacksmith named Chanbo. Although just a blacksmith, Chanbo seemed to know a lot about everything. In fact, he immediately recognized the person visiting him as Li Nun, the best hitman in Joshin. After hearing that Li Nun was looking for his belongings, Chanbo retrieved them while apologizing for the behavior of the neighborhood children. Apparently, some of Li Nun's money had been spent by the children to buy food. What shocked Li Nun was when Chanbo asked about his health, as if he knew about the illness that Li Nun was suffering from. Hearing this, Li Nun finally asked Chanbo for help to get the mawangcho for his illness, because from the information he had, the plant could be found on Mount Jiangnan. In response, Chanbo agreed to Li Nun's request. However, considering that Mount Jiangnan was full of criminals, Chanbo seemed a bit hesitant. Even so, he promised to do his best. Before Li Nun left, Chanbo reminded him not to cause trouble and to live a quiet life, as many people were after him. Hearing this, Li Nun returned to Shan Hong's eatery and immediately began training to become a professional servant, with the most difficult challenge being learning to smile. This was something Li Nun almost never did, considering his profession as a hitman. On the other hand, a judge was seen punishing officials deemed incompetent in leading the city. It was known that the city was now controlled by bad people who even ran gambling and opium businesses. However, so far, there was no evidence to put the perpetrators behind bars, indicating that the officials had been bribed by them. After punishing them all, the judge asked one of the officials named Yi Bang to read a letter from the governor, where the letter stated that a cruel and cunning criminal named Daki had escaped from prison and was heading toward Mount Jiangnan. Apparently, the judge was instructed to capture Daki alive before he reached Mount Jiangnan. Without delay, posters of Daki were distributed in an effort to catch him. One of these posters was now right in front of Li Nun and Qielbach, who were intently looking at it. As they were about to leave, they were stopped by patrolling officers. Furthermore, since Li Nun was new in the area, he was asked to show his identification. Fortunately, one of the officers recognized that Li Nun worked at Shan Hong's eatery, so they were allowed to go. That night, the judge, who had woken up to relieve himself, was startled by a sword suddenly placed against his neck. The man holding the sword was named Dalgi, who stated that his client, Daki, wanted to return safely to Mount Jiangnan. If not, Dalgi could not guarantee the safety of the judge and his family. The next day, the frightened judge told everything to Yi Bang and asked for his opinion. Yi Bang then explained that Daki was the brother of Becca, the boss of the criminals. The two brothers were known for stealing money and supplying opium. Additionally, they were notorious for their lack of mercy and their ability to kill easily. Even the government feared them because they had many connections with martial artists. Shortly thereafter, Yi Bang was seen meeting with the criminals who were Becca's subordinates. At that time, they were led by a man named Chumsop, and Dalgi was also seen watching from a distance. When Yi Bang and Chumsop were alone, it was revealed that Yi Bang had made a deal with Becca, where he had agreed to ensure Dachi's safety in exchange for a reward that Yi Bang had already received. However, the reward did not match their previous agreement, and Becca even threatened Yi Bang. Nevertheless, Yi Bang remained calm and tried to provoke Chumsop, saying that if Daki returned, his current position would be jeopardized. On the other hand, while Shan Hong was closing her restaurant, Daki and his men suddenly arrived. At that moment, they behaved obnoxiously, forcing Shan Hong, Li Nun, and Qielbach to smile, even though the situation was very tense. From the moment they arrived, Qielbach realized that the man was Daki, the same as the one on the poster he had seen earlier. When Daki called Qielbach over, intending to pay him with his money, he suddenly stabbed him, revealing that Daki was the one who had killed his father in the past. This also explained why Qielbach was so determined and brave to attack him. However, Daki managed to block the attack with his hand, became enraged, and decided to attack Qielbach. Suddenly, Li Nun intervened, showing some of his skills to save her, and thus, the two assailants were defeated. After the incident, Li Nun initially planned to leave and told Shan Hong to report what had actually happened. However, when Shan Hong mentioned that the criminals and officials in the city were working together, Li Nun decided against it. Reporting the incident would endanger Shan Hong and Qielbach. Therefore, he chose to bury the two bodies instead. The next day, Yi Bang received news that Daki had not arrived at his hideout. Knowing this, Yi Bang decided to set out on his own to find out what had happened to Daki. Shortly thereafter, he arrived at Shan Hong's restaurant to rest. However, after taking a few bites of his meal, Yi Bang was startled by the appearance of Li Nun, whom he had never seen before. Seeing this, Shan Hong explained that Li Nun was a servant working for her. At that moment, Yi Bang questioned Li Nun about his place of origin, to which Li Nun briefly replied that he was from the southern region. Hearing this, Yi Bang chose not to pursue his curiosity about Li Nun. Instead, he asked Shan Hong about Daki, whom he had been searching for. Hearing this, Shan Hong pretended not to know, saying that she had never seen him. However, Yi Bang felt that something was off and decided to kidnap Chilbok to find out the truth. At first, Chilbok refused to admit that he knew anything about Dachi's whereabouts. But after being pressured, Dachi's and his henchman bodies were eventually found. Seeing the wounds on Dachi's body, Yi Bang realized that the person who had killed Dachi was not just anyone. The next day, Yi Bang visited Chanbo, the blacksmith whom he believed knew a lot about everything. However, when questioned, Chanbo remained silent and claimed to know nothing about the person he was referring to. Chanbo also stated that he had no obligation to report anything to him. Chanbo's words angered Yi Bang, who then ordered Dalgi to beat him. Despite the severe injuries Chanbo suffered, he still refused to reveal the truth, and he was even prepared to die for it. Seeing this, Yi Bang cunningly threatened to harm the children in the neighborhood where Chanbo lived. This finally forced Chanbo to reveal the truth, and Yi Bang learned that the person who easily killed Dachi was the best hitman in Jiaxin, named Li Nun. That night, Li Nun and Shan Hong, who were anxiously waiting for Chilbok's return, were shocked by the arrival of Yi Bang and his men. At that moment, he accused Li Nun and Shan Hong of being involved in Dachi's death, where Yi Bang also said that as an official, he could kill Li Nun and Shan Hong for this. Even if they didn't do it, Bet Ga would surely come to kill them, as Dachi was his beloved younger brother. Apparently, the only reason Bet Ga hadn't done so yet was because he had prevented them from coming down the mountain. With his connections to the criminals, Li Nun couldn't afford to act recklessly. However, Yi Bang instead ordered Li Nun to kill Bet Ga, with the reward being Chilbok's safety in the Mwangcho plant that he had been searching for all this time. Shortly after, Chanbo apologized for revealing information about Li Nun, including his illness. He said that he had no choice and was now ready if Li Nun decided to take his life. However, Li Nun simply asked Chanbo to tell him who Yi Bang really was. It turned out, Yi Bang was once the head of swordsmanship in the Anbayan region. Currently, as a government official, Yi Bang is secretly still controlling swordsmen and running an opium business. As a result, many people have fallen into debt, and Yi Bang seizes their land and families to sell. Moreover, he extorts the judge and uses him as a puppet. So, it can be concluded that the real ruler of the area is Yi Bang, although in the beginning, it appeared that the judge held power. Yi Bang does all of this without the judge's knowledge and awareness. However, at the same time, there is Bet Ga's group, which is very powerful and constantly threatens Yi Bang to stop his opium business. On the surface, it appears that Yi Bang and Bet Ga are not in conflict and even seem to collaborate frequently. However, Yi Bang secretly desires to kill Bet Ga because his opium business is threatened. Additionally, Dalgi has been Yi Bang's subordinate from the start, not Bet Ga's. And the reason for threatening the judge to let Dachi return safely was because it was part of the agreement between Yi Bang and Bet Ga, who wanted Dachi to return safely. After hearing Chanbo's explanation and learning more about the situation, Li Nun decided to proceed with his agreement with Yi Bang to kill Bet Ga. If Yi Bang breaks his promise regarding Chilbok and the Mwangcho as the reward, Li Nun will not hesitate to take his life. Elsewhere, Chum Sop was angry with Yi Bang for sending Li Nun to kill his boss, because he was actually wanted to return to his hideout quickly to save Bet Ga. However, Yi Bang persuaded Chum Sop to work with him and allow Bet Ga to be killed by Li Nun. Yi Bang also told him that with Bet Ga's death, Chum Sop would automatically become the boss of the criminals. So, all Chum Sop needed to do was let Li Nun do his job. Afterward, Chum Sop only needed to fulfill his duty as a subordinate by eliminating the person who killed his boss. This way, not only would help him become the new boss, but he would also maintain his reputation as a loyal subordinate. This reveals how cunning and manipulative Yi Bang is, as he can turn a difficult situation into an advantageous opportunity. Not long after, Li Nun arrived at Bet Ga's hideout, and he immediately took down the guards one by one. He then ambushed Bet Ga, who was busy with women. However, Bet Ga was not at all surprised by his arrival, as he even guessed that the person who sent Li Nun was Yi Bang. Calmly, Bet Ga approached Li Nun with the intent to intimidate him, but suddenly attacked Li Nun and pulled the sword out of his own body. At that moment, Li Nun was shocked to see Bet Ga effortlessly pull the sword from his stomach without showing any signs of pain. Nonetheless, he eventually managed to kill Bet Ga. After Bet Ga's death, as planned, Chum Sop and his men immediately surrounded Li Nun from two different sides. while Yi Bang watched from a distance with an evil smile on his face. Li Nun then tried to eliminate them all, but instead, he fell unconscious. Apparently, Yi Bang had anticipated that Li Nun would not last long due to his illness, so when he passed out, Li Nun was taken to Yi Bang's hideout. That night, while Li Nun was tied up with Dalgi guarding him, a man suddenly appeared, claiming that Yi Bang had sent him to cut Li Nun's Achilles tendons. However, before doing so, the man talked a lot and inadvertently revealed that he had killed Chilbok on Yi Bang's orders. Upon learning this, Li Nun became enraged and mercilessly killed the man. At the same time, Dalgi, who witnessed this, did not panic but instead seemed curious about Li Nun's skills. He even allowed Li Nun to free himself and challenged him to a duel. At that moment, Dalgi was confident that he could defeat Li Nun, especially knowing that he was not in his best condition. After that, a fight ensued, and despite his illness, Li Nun remained the best assassin in Joshin after successfully defeating Dalgi. After the fight, Li Nun found Chilbok's body and immediately took his home. Not long after, Li Nun returned to Shan Hong's place, and upon realizing that her son was no longer alive, Shan Hong was shocked and in disbelief. After that, while tending to Li Nun's wounds, Shan Hong spoke about Chilbok and her hopes that her son would have a better life than she did. However, with his death, those hopes and dreams were shattered, making the savings that Shan Hong had set aside for Chilbok useless. Therefore, with the money she had, Shan Hong begged Li Nun to avenge him, asking him to kill everyone involved in her son's death. If the money was not enough, Shan Hong was even willing to offer herself to Li Nun. The next day, Yi Bang was shocked to discover that Dalgi was dead and that Li Nun had escaped. At that moment, the person who had ordered Li Nun's head had arrived, ready to take him. That person was Yuul, a woman who had once tried to kill Li Nun but failed and lost one of her eyes. It turned out that Yi Bang had been working with Yuul to deliver Li Nun alive. Therefore, Yi Bang was deeply embarrassed to find out that Li Nun had fled. Fortunately, Yuul was not angry and seemed unfazed because she already knew that Li Nun would return. After that, in the midst of their conversation, news suddenly arrived that the criminals led by Chumsop were attacking, and they were not happy about it, feeling deceived by Yi Bang. This was related to the death of Bekga, which was part of his plan. Feeling that he couldn't win against so many criminals, especially since Dalgi had died, Yi Bang had no choice but to ask for Yuul's help. Fortunately, she agreed to help him. Outside the gate, as Chumsop and his men grew bored of waiting, Li Nun suddenly appeared and began attacking. After that, Yi Bang was shocked to see Li Nun slaughtering the criminals, leaving none alive. It turned out that Li Nun had taken painkillers to keep fighting, even though his illness had not yet healed. He did this to complete his mission, despite knowing that his heart would explode if he took too many painkillers. After Li Nun had killed many of Yi Bang's subordinates, Yuul then revealed her secret power. With the power of her eye, Yuul hypnotized Yi Bang's remaining men, giving them the courage to face Li Nun. Even those who had already fallen were revived by her power. Despite this, Li Nun used all his strength to break through and nearly injured Yuul. Just when it seemed like Li Nun wouldn't survive, he suddenly gained additional strength and pointed his sword towards Yuul. Driven by his mission of vengeance for Chilbok's death, the various stabs and punctures with sharp objects no longer seemed to affect him. Seeing this, all of Yi Bang's men panicked and no longer dared to confront Li Nun. Even Yi Bang, who appeared terrified at that moment, was forced to promise his men a reward to face Li Nun. However, it was futile as Li Nun was no match for them. Feeling there was no way out, Yi Bang fled to escape Li Nun. However, Chanbo suddenly appeared, causing Yi Bang to run away again, only to be confronted by Shan Hong. Meanwhile, Li Nun continued his rampage, killing everyone, until eventually, it took a toll on his body and Li Nun collapsed. The next day, Shan Hong and Chanbo took Li Nun for medical treatment, where they tried various methods to save his life. But it was all in vain, as his body was now teetering between life and death. To make matters worse, Yi Bang, who had somehow survived, found out about this and forced Chanbo to lead him to Li Nun's hiding place. However, when Yi Bang went to ambush Li Nun in his room, he was not there. Instead, he was now behind Yi Bang. It turned out that Li Nun had recovered thanks to the Mwangcho plant that had been found earlier. Before killing Yi Bang, Li Nun asked who wanted him dead. Hearing this, Bang smiled widely, thinking he still had a chance. So, he offered to trade that information for his life. However, Li Nun refused the offer and killed him immediately. Moral lesson from the story: don't ignore your doctor just because you're a famous assassin. Otherwise, you'll end up in more trouble than your enemies. Even hitmen need to listen to their doctors if they want to avoid dying of a broken heart.